Chosen one, pack your bags. I mean that. Something in your spirit has been restless for months, an unsettledness you could not explain, a sense that you do not quite belong where you are anymore. You have tried to make peace with your current situation. Try to talk yourself into being content. Try to bloom where you were planted, and it has not worked because heaven never intended for you to stay. Your next season does not live at your current address, and the restlessness you have been fighting is not a problem to be fixed. It is a moving notice. It is heaven telling you that the place you are standing is not your destination, and it is time to get ready to go. I know how confusing this has been. You have looked at your discontent and assumed something was wrong with you. You have wondered why you cannot just be satisfied like everyone else seems to be. You have prayed for peace about staying, and the peace never came. Let me tell you why. The peace never came because heaven was not going to bless you into settling for a place you were always meant to leave. That holy discontent you have felt is one of the kindest things heaven has ever done for you. It is a refusal of God to let you get comfortable in a place that was only ever supposed to be temporary. Let me tell you what your current address actually represents, because it is more than a physical location. Your current address is a whole arrangement of your present life, the patterns you have outgrown, the relationships that no longer fit, the version of yourself you have been living as, the ceiling you have learned to live beneath. All of that is the address heaven is telling you to leave, not because it was bad, but because it was a way station, a place you stayed for a season, and the season is ending. The lease on this version of your life is up, and a new place has already been prepared. I know that moving frightens you. It frightens everyone. There's a strange comfort, even in a place that no longer fits, because at least it is familiar. You know the shape of your current struggles. You know how to survive where you are. And the unknown of the new address, even a better one, can feel more threatening than the known limitation of the old one. This is why so many people stay in places they have outgrown for years longer than they should. The familiar cage feels safe in the open door, but you are not made for a cage, however familiar. You are made to move when heaven says move. If something in you is resonating, if you can feel the truth that you are not meant to stay where you are, do one thing with me before we go further. Comment the words, "I am ready to move." Not because a comment changes your circumstances, but because saying it tells your own hesitant spirit that you are willing to leave the familiar for prepared. Here is what I need you to understand about a divine relocation. When heaven moves you, it does not move you randomly. Every relocation in the sacred stories was a move toward a promise. The people of God were not wanderers. They were travelers with destination, led step by step toward a land already prepared for them. So, this unsettledness is not heaven turning you out into the wilderness with no plan. It is heaven leading you toward an address that already has your name on it. You are not being evicted. You are being relocated. And the difference between those two words is the difference between fear and faith. But I have to be honest with you about something. Because you came here for truth. There is a reason that people who feel the call to move so often stay stuck anyway, year after year, knowing they should go and somehow never going. It is not a lack of desire. It is not even a lack of faith. It is a specific condition that keeps people frozen at an address they know they are meant to leave. I am going to tell you exactly what that condition is later in this message, and what a team of researchers in New York discovered about it, because what they found explained something restless, called people have struggled with their whole lives, but never had words for. For now, hold only this one question as we go. What if the reason you have stayed stuck at an address you know is not yours, was never weakness or fear, but something inside you that can actually be restored? Hold that question. We will return to it. But first, I need to show you where you have actually been, because you cannot understand where you're going until you make peace with the road that brought you here. Let me name some of the ways this moving notice has been showing up, so you know I am speaking to your life, and not to a stranger. The things that used to satisfy you have gone flat. Achievements that once would have thrilled you now feel hollow. You have found yourself looking around at a life you built and quietly thinking, is this it? That is not ingratitude. That is your spirit refusing to accept a destination that was only ever a stopover. You have also felt a strange pull towards something you cannot yet name, a sense of a life just beyond the horizon of your current one, calling to you. That pull is the new address calling you home before you have even seen it. You may also have noticed that doors at your current address have started to close on their own. Things that used to work have stopped working. Relationships and arrangements that once felt solid have begun to loosen. People assume this is misfortune. It is not. It is heaven making the old address uncomfortable enough that you will finally be willing to leave it. Sometimes love does not open a new door until it has closed the old ones, because we are too prone to staying. So, if your current place has been falling apart, do not despair. It may simply be heaven packing your bags for you because you were taking too long to pack them yourself. Let me take you back over the road you have traveled, because there is meaning in it you have not yet seen. You look back at the places you've been, the seasons you've lived through, and much of it looks like wandering detours, dead ends, years that seem to go nowhere. But I want to show you something. Every address you have lived at, every season you passed through, was teaching you something you would need at the destination. Nothing was wasted. The hard place taught you endurance. The lonely place taught you to hear heaven. The place where you were overlooked taught you humility. You were not wandering. You were being prepared, address by address, for a place that would require everything those seasons built in you. Think about how heaven moves a person toward their destiny. Rarely in a straight line, almost always through a series of addresses, each one developing something the next one requires. The detours you resented were not heaven losing track of you. They were the curriculum. You could not have handled your destination earlier because you had not yet lived at the addresses that would prepare you for it. So, the length of your journey, the many places you have been, is not evidence that you are behind. It is evidence of how thoroughly you have been prepared for where you are finally about to go. Here is the first thing I want you to truly receive. The reason you can feel the restlessness so strongly now is that the preparation is nearly complete. You do not feel the urge to move when there is still more to learn where you are. The restlessness rises precisely when a season has finished its work in you. So, this powerful sense that you cannot stay, the one that has grown louder in recent months, is not random discontent. It is a signal that the current address has taught you everything it had to teach, and you are now ready for the next one. The intensity of your restlessness is a measure of how complete your preparation has become. Let me reframe the seasons you regret, too, because they have weighed on you. You look back at certain addresses with shame, certain seasons you wish you could erase, certain years you feel you wasted. But even those, especially those, were part of the journey. The place where you fell taught you grace. The place where you failed taught you what matters. Heaven is the only master builder who can use even your detours as material for your destination. Nothing in your journey is wasted in the economy of heaven, not even the parts you are ashamed of. They are all being woven into the person who will thrive at the new address. If that just lifted something off of you, if you suddenly see your long and winding road as preparation rather than wandering, mark this moment. Comment the words, "Nothing was wasted." That is not a small realization. That is the moment a person stops grieving their journey and starts honoring every address that shaped them for where they're going. Now, here's the second thing, and this one is the one that gets you unstuck. The reason you have not yet moved, even though you know you are meant to, is not that you lack the faith to go. It is that you have been trying to make the move from a depleted, divided state, and a depleted system cannot take a leap. Moving toward a new address requires vision, courage, and clarity, and all three of those collapse when you are running on empty. You've been trying to summon the strength to leap while operating at a fraction of your capacity, and then blaming yourself for not leaping. The problem was never your willingness. The problem was the state you were trying to leap from. This changes everything about your stuckness. You have assumed that staying frozen meant you were a coward, or that you did not want it badly enough, or that your faith was too small. None of that is true. You'll want to go with everything in you. But a person cannot make a faith leap from a foggy, exhausted, divided mind any more than a runner can sprint with their legs tied together. The issue was never your heart. It was a condition you were operating from. And that condition, unlike cowardice, is not a character flaw. It is something that can be repaired. And when it is, the leap that felt impossible becomes not just possible, but natural. I told you I would come back to what a team in New York discovered about this exact condition. The thing that keeps people frozen at the wrong address. I am almost ready to bring it forward. But a discovery only matters once you feel the full shape of the problem it solves. So, before the answer, you need to see the new address. You need to see what is waiting at the place heaven is moving you toward. Let me show you that future now, because it is the very thing your whole journey has been leading to. There is something else about your journey worth seeing clearly. You have probably noticed that you can never quite copy the path of anyone else. The routes that worked for other people never seem to work for you. You watched others settle happily into addresses that would have suffocated you, and you wonder what was wrong with you that you could not do the same. Nothing is wrong with you. Your journey was always custom. Heaven was never going to lead you down a borrowed road, because your destination is not a borrowed one. The very fact that no standard path ever fit you is proof that you were being led somewhere standard paths do not go. So stop measuring your journey against the people who settled early. They were called to a different kind of life, and there is no shame in that. But you were called to move, to pioneer, to travel towards something that required every strange detour you have taken. The unrepeatable nature of your road is not a defect. It is the signature of a destiny that was designed specifically for you by a God who does not lead any two of his travelers down exactly the same path. There is a third thing I need to place in you before we turn to the vision, because it will steady you for the move. When you finally begin to leave an address you have outgrown, there will be grief, and the grief will surprise you. You will mourn things you thought you were eager to leave. You will feel a pull to turn back, the way the people heaven freed from slavery longed for the very place that had enslaved them simply because it was familiar. This is normal, and it is not a sign you are making a mistake. It is the heart saying goodbye. Let it grieve, but do not let it turn you back. The discomfort of leaving the familiar is the toll every traveler pays at the border of their promised land. So decide now, before the grief comes, that you will not let nostalgia for the old address talk you out of the new one. The enemy of your destiny does not need to block the door. He only needs to make you homesick for the cage. Refuse it. When the longing to return rises, remind yourself why you left. You did not leave because the old place was all bad. You left because you outgrew it and you cannot unrow. The only way is forward, toward the address that fits the person you have become. Now let me show you what that address actually looks like, so the vision of where you're going can give you the courage to leave where you are. Let me show you the new address, the place your next season actually lives. Picture yourself a year from now waking up in the life heaven has been preparing for you. The first thing you notice is that you fit. The constant low friction of being in the wrong place, the sense of straining against an environment that did not match you, is gone. You belong here. The work matches your gift. The people match your spirit. The pace matches your soul. You did not have to shrink to fit this address. It was built to your size. And the relief of finally living somewhere that fits is something you will feel in your body every single morning. Let me show you the first phase of that new address. The ceiling is gone. At your old address, there was a limit, a height beyond which you could not grow, and you had begun to believe it was simply your limit. At the new address, you discover it was never your limit. It was the ceiling of that particular place. Here, there is room above you, room to grow into the fullness you always sensed but could never reach. The things that were impossible at the old address become normal at the new one, not because you became a different person, but because you finally moved to a place with enough sky. Here is the second phase of it. The relationships at the new address are different. For so long, you were surrounded by people who could not quite see you, who related to the smaller version of you, and who would have been threatened by your growth. At the new address, you find your people, the ones who recognize you, the ones who celebrate your rising instead of resenting it, and the ones who are waiting at the destination for the traveler to finally arrive. The loneliness of being unseen at the old address ends because you are finally among people who belong to the same season you are. The third phase is the one that makes the whole move worth it. At the new address, you step into your purpose, the thing you were made for. The assignment you could feel but never had room to fulfill finally has a place to happen. The old address could not contain it. There was no room there for the fullness of your calling. But the new address was built precisely to be the stage for the very thing heaven created you to do. You do not just move to a better life. You move to the place where your life finally means what was always meant to mean. There is a fourth phase of the new address I do not want you to miss because it touches provision. At the old address, you were always straining, always stretched thin, always wondering if there would be enough. Part of that was never your failure. It was that the old place could not sustain what you were carrying. At the new address, the provision matches the assignment. What was always scarce where you were becomes available where you are going. Because heaven funds what heaven assigns, and the assignment lives at the new address, not the old one. You were not bad with what you had. You were simply trying to live a destination-sized life in a stopover-sized place. Anchor that future right now because what you declare, you begin to draw toward you. Comment the words, "My new address awaits." Say it not as a beggar hoping, but as a chosen one packing for a destination already prepared. Let me put an ancient face on what is happening to you, because you are not the first chosen one heaven asked to pack their bags. Think of Abraham. He was settled, comfortable, established in the land of his fathers when the call came. Leave your country, leave your familiar place, and go to a land that I will show you. Notice that heaven did not give him the full map. It only said, "Go, and I will show you when you get there." Abraham had to leave the known address before the new one was ever revealed. And because he went, he became the father of nations. The promise was not at his old address. It was at the one he had not seen yet, the one he could only reach by being willing to leave. That is the pattern of every great destiny. The promise lives at an address you have to move toward before you can see it clearly. Heaven rarely shows you the whole destination in advance, because if it did, you would not need faith to go. So, if you do not yet have all the details of where you are headed, that is not a reason to stay. That is simply how the journey of the called has always worked. You take the first step toward the new address in faith, and the path reveals itself as you walk. Abraham did not wait for certainty. He moved on a promise, and so must you. So, let me show you the road from here, because a journey needs a path and not just a destination. The road does not require you to see the whole way. It only requires the next step. Pack what matters. Release what you have outgrown. Say your goodbyes to the old address with gratitude, not bitterness. And then take the first step, the one you can see, trusting that the next one will appear once you are moving. The frozen wait for total certainty before they go, and so they never go. The called take the step that is in front of them, and the road unrolls beneath their feet. That first step is what we are preparing you for right now. Now, let me close the loop I opened at the beginning. I told you there was something a team of researchers in New York discovered about the condition that keeps called people frozen at an address they know they're meant to leave. And I said I would come back to it. I waited until now on purpose, because a solution only becomes useful once you understand the full shape of the problem it solves. You now understand the shape. You feel why you have stayed stuck, and you have seen the address you are moving toward. So, you are finally ready for the rest. But I have to be honest with you about why this answer has stayed hidden from sincere, called people for so long. It is not because heaven was hiding it. It is because the answer comes from a place most spiritual people never think to look. It does not arrive wrapped in religious language. It comes from a laboratory, and the bridge between what science discovered and what your spirit has been crying out for is the most important thing I will say in this entire message. So, let me build that bridge for you now. Carefully, because a journey as important as yours deserves to be made with everything working in your favor. In 1981, something was confirmed in a laboratory that most people in spiritual communities have never heard. A scientist named Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize for proving that the human brain is built in two halves, two hemispheres, and that these halves were designed to operate in synchronized partnership. When they fire together, in sync, a person enters what researchers call whole brain activation. And in that synchronized state, the very faculties you need in order to make a great move come fully online. Vision to see where you're going, courage to leave the familiar, and clarity to take the right next step. The leap you have been unable to make is not on the other side of more waiting. It is on the other side of alignment, action, and faith-filled movement toward the address that has been prepared for you. It is not a mood sound. It is a targeted auditory sequence engineered based on the Nobel Prize-winning research of Dr. Sperry to bring the two hemispheres back into sync and restore the whole brain state that was your default in childhood. The genius switch is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who understands that God prepared not only the new address, but also the mind clear enough to actually move toward it. The person who has felt the call to go for years, who has wanted to leap and somehow could not, and who is finally willing to stop treating their frozenness as a character flaw and start treating it as something with a specific cause. Most people who hear this will scroll past because they have made peace with staying stuck where they are. You are still here. That is not coincidence. That is the persistence of a traveler who refuses to die at a way station. Let me tell you what it costs, because it will surprise you. Colleagues told Dr. Barone this would be fair value even at $500. In-person neurofeedback runs $300 an hour. A home machine can cost $7,000. It was not released at $500 or $200 or even $100. It was released at $49. Today, on the direct page, an additional $10 off brings it to $39. Along with it come 4 free editions: a guided visualization from a top-rated creator, a grocery guide that saves $100 a month, a century-old text on attracting provision, and a printable guide of 5 daily habits. All of it is backed by an unconditional money-back guarantee. Listen once. Listen 80 times. If it does not do for you what is done for over 18,000 people, every dollar comes back. No conditions. I should be honest about one thing plainly. The $39 price is not guaranteed beyond this page. The team has communicated that the price will rise. That is not pressure. It is simply the reality of what limited access to clinical-grade neurological restoration looks like. And if you search common platforms for anything that sounds like this, you will find imitations. The team studied them, and most carried no real neurosynchronization at all. The mechanism is what makes the difference, and the mechanism only exists in what they built. The direct page is the only verified source, and that is where the link points. Read everything there before you decide anything. Now hear me carefully, because this protects your heart. The tool does not replace God. It does not replace obedience. It does not make the move for you. What God is calling you to is not conditional on any tool, but a tool that restores a receiver simply gives you clarity and courage to actually take the step heaven has been asking you to take. So if your spirit confirmed something while I was speaking, do not argue it away. Comment the words, "I am packing now," as a chosen one who refuses to die at an address that was never home. Let me answer the doubt rising in some of you, because I would feel it too. You have tried things before, apps, sound files, practices that promised clarity and gave you a few good days before the fog returned. I understand fatigue, but here's the difference. Most of what is sold reaches only a sliver of the picture and leaves the two halves as disconnected as it found them. What Dr. Borrowed Mind built works at the level of hemisphere synchronization itself. The actual root of frozenness, using a layered protocol refined over years of development. Clinical work, that is a different mechanism. And a different mechanism produces a different category of result. This is also why effort never got you to move. You cannot force vision and courage by trying harder when the system is divided. You restore it gently, a few minutes at a time, until clarity becomes your ordinary baseline instead of your rare exception. The deeper current of this message, though, is not a tool. It is the new life waiting at the address heaven, is moving you toward once the receiver is finally clear. So, let me return us to that, because the most important thing still waits ahead. And for the chosen one who felt something stir when the mind was mentioned earlier, that door is still open in the description and the pinned comment. It is a small step, but small steps taken from a clear mind have begun journeys that change entire lives. That is the only place I will point to it. Everything that remains in this message belongs entirely to something deeper, and it is time we return to it. I want to speak to who you actually are now on the edge of this relocation. You are a traveler, not a settler. There is a kind of person heaven keeps moving, not because they are unstable, but because their assignment is larger than any single place can hold. You have always sensed this about yourself, the inability to fully settle, the horizon always calling. That is not restlessness to be cured. That is the heart of a pioneer, someone made to go where others have not gone and open the way for those who come after. You were never